A sheriff slammed handcuffs onto a father's wrists, right in front of his little girl. The whole diner went silent. Nobody knew the truth. The quiet man they were humiliating was an undercover FBI agent, working the most dangerous case of his career. He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He simply looked into his daughter's frightened eyes and whispered, "Everything will be okay." What happened next would shock the entire town of Millbrook. 6 months had passed since Daniel Carter lost his wife. Since then, every morning had felt like a small battle he had to win all over again. He had learned to pack school lunches with shaking hands. He had learned to braid his daughter's hair, badly, but well enough that she sometimes laughed at his clumsy attempts. He worked long hours and still found the strength, every single night, to read her a bedtime story before sleep took her. Lily was 8 years old. But grief had made her quieter than most children her age. She rarely raised her voice anymore. She watched the world carefully, as if waiting for the next thing to be taken from her. Daniel had promised her one thing, over and over. No matter how hard life became, he would always come back to her. That morning, they stopped at a small roadside diner in the town of Millbrook before Lily's school. It was called the Sunrise Diner. Red booths, a checkered floor, the smell of coffee and bacon in the air. Daniel ordered eggs, toast, and black coffee. Lily happily dug into a plate of pancakes, completely unaware that her father had barely slept the night before. He had spent those quiet hours reviewing a classified case. Daniel Carter was not simply a tired single father trying to hold his family together. He was an FBI agent, undercover, unarmed, and carrying a secret that could put his life at risk. What Lily didn't know, what no one in Millbrook knew, was the real reason her father had come to this small town. For nearly a year, Daniel had been investigating a corruption network hidden deep inside the county. Stolen evidence, illegal weapons, officials who had spent years quietly protecting criminals instead of stopping them. His superiors at the bureau believed someone inside the sheriff's department itself was involved. Maybe more than one person. Daniel had been ordered to stay undercover until he could identify exactly who was responsible. That was why he sat in this diner dressed like an ordinary, tired father instead of a federal agent. No badge around his neck, no weapon on his belt, nothing that would give away who he truly was. He had chosen his cover carefully. A single dad, grieving, quiet, unremarkable, exactly the kind of man nobody would look at twice. But someone had already looked twice. The diner door swung open, and Sheriff Raymond Cole walked in. Cole was known throughout the county as a powerful man. Silver-haired, broad-shouldered, always in a crisp tan uniform with a gold star pinned to his chest. He rarely apologized for anything. He never tolerated being questioned. People in Millbrook either respected him or feared him, often both at once. His eyes moved across the diner and landed on Daniel. Someone, it seemed, had reported seeing a man matching Daniel's description near an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town the night before. Sheriff Cole did not know that the man he was looking at was FBI. He only knew that this stranger had been somewhere he shouldn't have been. Cole crossed the diner floor with heavy, deliberate steps. Every conversation around them died as customers turned to watch. He stopped at Daniel's table and demanded identification. Daniel stayed calm. He explained, in a quiet, even voice, that there had been a misunderstanding. He asked if they could speak privately, away from his daughter, but Cole had already decided what he wanted to believe. He accused Daniel of trespassing, of interfering with an active investigation. His voice rose louder with every sentence, until the entire diner was watching the confrontation unfold. Lily's small hand tightened around her father's arm. Then, without warning, Sheriff Cole grabbed Daniel by the wrist and yanked his arm behind his back. Lily screamed, "Please stop! Please don't hurt my daddy!" Every head in the diner turned. Forks froze halfway to mouths. The waitress behind the counter gasped and covered her mouth with both hands. Daniel could have stopped it instantly. One word. One flash of his federal badge, hidden carefully in his jacket. It would have ended the humiliation in seconds. But he thought of his orders. He thought of the corrupt officials still hiding somewhere inside the department. Someone who might be watching right now, waiting to see if Daniel would reveal himself. If he did, months of careful work would collapse in a single moment. The real criminals would vanish before the FBI could catch them, so Daniel swallowed his anger. He let the cold metal of the handcuffs close around his wrists. Lily stood beside the table, tears streaming down her face, begging the sheriff to let her father go. She didn't understand any of it. All she knew was that a man with a badge was hurting her daddy, and no one was stopping him. Daniel turned his head and looked into his daughter's eyes. His voice was low, steady, and full of a calm she didn't expect. "Sometimes," he told her, "good people have to stay calm even when bad things are happening, because the truth always finds a way into the light." Those quiet words did something unexpected. They didn't just reach Lily. Standing near the door, a young deputy named Ray Simmons watched the entire scene, and something inside him twisted with discomfort. He had children of his own at home. Watching a little girl cry while her father was dragged away like a criminal, it didn't sit right with him. Not at all, but he said nothing. Not yet. Daniel was led out of the diner, handcuffs biting into his wrists, his daughter's cries echoing behind him. And as the door swung shut, nobody in that diner could have imagined what was about to be uncovered. Outside, the morning air was cold. Sheriff Cole gripped Daniel's arm and pushed him toward the patrol car parked at the curb. A small crowd had gathered near the diner's entrance, drawn by Lily's screams. Whispering among themselves as they watched a man in handcuffs being marched across the parking lot. Daniel didn't resist. He walked with his head level, his eyes calm, his jaw tight with restraint. Every step was a test of discipline he had trained for years to master. Then his phone buzzed once inside his jacket pocket. Cole didn't notice. He was too busy reciting accusations, too satisfied with his own authority, too confident that he had just put a suspicious stranger exactly where he belonged. Daniel felt the vibration again, a second buzz, a pattern he recognized instantly, a coded alert from his FBI team, the kind reserved only for urgent developments. He couldn't check it, not with his hands cuffed behind his back and a sheriff at his side. But his mind raced. Something had changed, something important. Cole shoved him against the patrol car and reached for the rear door. "You're going to sit in that cell and think about what happens to people who wander where they don't belong," Cole said, his voice low and threatening. "This is my county. Nothing happens here without me knowing about it." Daniel said nothing. He simply looked back through the diner window, where Lily stood pressed against the glass, her small hands flat against it, tears streaking her face. He held her gaze for one long moment. He wanted her to see that he wasn't afraid. He wanted her to remember that no matter how frightening this looked, he was still her father, steady, present, unbroken. Cole opened the car door and pushed Daniel inside. As the door slammed shut, Daniel finally allowed himself to think about the message waiting on his phone. He had a strong suspicion about what it might contain. For weeks, his investigation had been circling one location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Millbrook, a place where evidence had reportedly vanished, where illegal weapons were rumored to pass through unnoticed, where money moved without explanation. If the FBI team had found something new there, it meant the case was finally breaking open. Inside the patrol car, Daniel closed his eyes and thought back to how carefully he had prepared for this assignment. Before ever stepping foot in the Sunrise Diner that morning, he had done something Sheriff Cole could never have anticipated. He had placed a small, secure recording device inside the diner. Hidden beneath the counter near the register, disguised as an ordinary electrical outlet cover, it had been recording every sound in that room since the moment Daniel and Lily walked through the door. Every accusation Cole had shouted, every threat, every mention of the warehouse, all of it captured in perfect clarity. Cole had made a mistake he didn't even know he'd made. The patrol car pulled away from the diner, tires crunching over gravel, and Daniel watched Millbrook pass by through the window. The hardware store, the small church, the barber shop with its red and white pole spinning slowly. An ordinary small town, hiding something far from ordinary beneath its surface. At the sheriff's station, Daniel was led into a holding room. Cole tossed a folder onto the table and left without another word. clearly confident that the matter was settled. Alone in the room, Daniel allowed himself a slow breath. He thought of Lily's face pressed against the diner glass. He thought of his promise to her, that no matter what happened, he would come back. He believed that more than ever now. Meanwhile, back at the diner, the young deputy, Ray Simmons, remained behind to take statements from shaken customers. But his mind wasn't on his notepad. It was on the little girl who had been led away by a kind waitress, sobbing, asking again and again where her father had gone. Ray had joined the department to help people. Lately, he had begun to wonder if he was doing the opposite. He thought about the whispers he'd heard over the past year, rumors about missing evidence, about certain arrests that never seemed to make it to trial, about how Sheriff Cole always seemed one step ahead of federal inquiries. Ray had pushed those thoughts aside before. Today, watching a father dragged away in front of his sobbing child, he found he couldn't push them aside any longer. Back at the station, Daniel finally had a moment alone with his phone, hidden carefully from the deputy stationed outside his door. He read the coded message from his team, his eyes narrowed. The warehouse Daniel had been investigating for months was connected directly to Sheriff Cole's closest lieutenant. Financial records, recently uncovered, tied the warehouse's illegal activity straight to someone inside Cole's own inner circle. Suddenly, everything made sense. Cole hadn't simply made an honest mistake that morning. He had recognized something in Daniel, some flicker of instinct, some detail that didn't add up about the quiet, watchful stranger at the diner, and instead of asking questions, he had tried to intimidate him, to scare him off, to bury the truth before the FBI could ever reach it. Daniel leaned back against the cold cell wall, and for the first time that morning, allowed himself something close to a smile. Cole thought he had won. He had no idea what was coming. 20 minutes later, the quiet town of Millbrook changed forever. 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop outside the sheriff's station, engines humming, doors opening in perfect unison. Federal agents stepped out, moving with the calm, practiced precision of people who had done this many times before. At their center walked a tall woman with sharp eyes and a dark coat, Special Agent Diane Foster, the leader of Daniel's FBI team. Inside the station, Sheriff Cole was leaning back in his chair, feet up on his desk, sipping coffee, entirely unaware that his morning was about to collapse. The front door opened. Agent Foster walked in first, her federal badge already raised. "Sheriff Raymond Cole," she said, her voice calm and absolutely certain, "you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy." Cole's coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered against the floor. "What is this?" he demanded, rising from his chair so fast it toppled backward. "This is my department. You can't just—" "We can," Foster said simply, "and we have everything we need." Behind her, 2 more agents entered the holding area and opened the cell door. Daniel stepped out and, for the first time that day, reached into his jacket and pulled out his real identification, a federal badge, gleaming under the station's fluorescent lights. Cole's face went pale. "You," he said, staring at Daniel as if seeing him for the first time. "You're FBI," Daniel said quietly. "Special Agent Daniel Carter, and everything you said in that diner this morning, every accusation, every threat, every mention of that warehouse, was recorded." Cole's mouth opened, then closed. For a man who had spent 30 years never once being questioned, the silence that followed was its own kind of punishment. Agent Foster gestured, and 2 agents moved to secure Cole's hands behind his back. The same handcuffs that had humiliated Daniel hours earlier now closed around the sheriff's wrists instead. The deputy stationed nearby, Ray Simmons, watched the entire scene unfold with wide eyes, his notepad forgotten on the desk beside him. Word of the arrest spread through Millbrook faster than anyone could have predicted. By the time federal agents finished searching the sheriff's office, uncovering hidden files, falsified reports, and records linking Cole's lieutenant directly to the warehouse operation, a small crowd had gathered outside, murmuring in disbelief. The Sunrise Diner, meanwhile, had never fully emptied out. Customers who had witnessed the earlier confrontation stayed, drawn by nervous curiosity, watching through the windows as patrol cars and federal vehicles moved back and forth along Main Street. Lily sat at the counter, wrapped in a blanket the waitress had draped over her small shoulders, her pancakes long since forgotten. She had cried until she had no tears left, and now she simply stared at the door, waiting. Then it opened. Daniel walked in. For a moment, Lily didn't move, as if she couldn't quite believe it was real. Then she was off the stool and running, and Daniel dropped to one knee just in time to catch her as she threw her arms around his neck with such force that he nearly lost his balance. "Daddy," she sobbed into his shoulder. "You came back. You came back." "I told you I would," Daniel whispered, holding her tightly, one hand cradling the back of her head. "I promised, didn't I?" Around them, the diner had gone quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear that filled the silence. It was something closer to awe. The waitress, an older woman named Carol, who had worked at the Sunrise Diner for over 20 years, wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron and quietly slid a fresh stack of pancakes onto the counter for Lily. When Daniel reached for his wallet to pay, Carol shook her head firmly. "Your money's no good here today," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not after what that little girl went through." Daniel thanked her, still holding Lily close. Then Ray Simmons stepped through the diner door, his uniform hat in his hands, his expression heavy with something between guilt and respect. He approached slowly, as if unsure whether he had the right to. "Agent Carter," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. Not just for today. For every time I stood by and said nothing while people were treated unfairly in this county. I should have spoken up a long time ago." Daniel studied the young deputy for a long moment. He saw something in Ray's eyes, not the same hardened certainty that had lived in Cole's, but something softer, something still capable of change. "Admitting a mistake," Daniel said finally, "is the first step toward becoming better. Most people never even get that far." Ray nodded, swallowing hard, and for the first time that day allowed himself to breathe a little easier. Outside, the last of the federal vehicles pulled away from the station, carrying Sheriff Raymond Cole toward a future very different from the one he had imagined that morning. The investigation that followed would expose a corruption network that had operated in Millbrook for years. Falsified evidence, buried cases, innocent people wrongly accused while the guilty walked free under Cole's protection. But inside the Sunrise Diner, none of that mattered in that moment. What mattered was a father kneeling on a checkered floor, holding his daughter so tightly that neither of them wanted to let go. Weeks passed, and Millbrook slowly began to heal. The investigation into Sheriff Cole's department uncovered far more than anyone had expected. Falsified reports, missing evidence, years of quiet corruption that had allowed dangerous people to walk free, while innocent citizens were blamed in their place. Several officials were arrested alongside Cole. For the first time in a long while, the people of Millbrook felt like the truth actually mattered. Ray Simmons, the young deputy who had once stayed silent, became one of the strongest voices helping to rebuild trust in the department. He worked closely with federal investigators, determined to make sure nothing like what happened to Daniel and Lily would happen to another family again. Daniel returned to his quiet life as best he could. He still packed Lily's lunches every morning. He still braided her hair, a little better now, though still far from perfect. He still read her bedtime stories, though these days, Lily sometimes fell asleep smiling instead of staring silently at the ceiling. Grief hadn't disappeared from their lives. It never fully does, but something had shifted in Lily since that morning at the diner. She'd watched her father face humiliation with quiet strength. She had watched him keep his promise exactly as he said he would. And somewhere in that experience, a small piece of her trust in the world had begun to return. One Saturday morning, weeks after everything had happened, Daniel and Lily returned to the Sunrise Diner. Carol greeted them with a warm hug and, without being asked, brought out a plate of pancakes with a smiling face drawn in blueberries, Lily's favorite. As they settled into their usual booth, Lily noticed something new on the wall near their table. A small wooden sign, handwritten in careful letters, simply read, Never judge a person by the moment you see them in. Daniel smiled as he read it. He thought about all the customers who had watched him being handcuffed that morning, certain they understood exactly who he was. He thought about how wrong first impressions could be, and how much courage it sometimes took to stay quiet and let the truth reveal itself in its own time. "Daddy," Lily said, syrup on her fingers. "Is that true? What the sign says?" Daniel looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw, for the first time in months, a spark of the curious, hopeful little girl she had been before grief made her quiet. "It's true," he said. "Sometimes the person people judge the fastest is fighting the hardest battle nobody can see. That's why kindness matters, Lily, especially when you don't know someone's whole story." Lily thought about this for a moment, chewing slowly. Then she smiled. A real smile, wide and unguarded. "I think you're the bravest person I know," she said. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest, warm and overwhelming. He reached across the table and squeezed her small hand. "And I think," he said softly, "that you're the reason I try to be." Outside the diner window, Millbrook moved on with its morning. Cars passing, the barbershop sign spinning slowly, the world entirely unaware of how close it had come to losing something important that day. The sheriff walked into the Sunrise Diner, but inside, at a small booth by the window, a father and daughter shared pancakes in comfortable silence, healing a little more with each visit, because sometimes the person being humiliated is secretly fighting for everyone else. Sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the greatest responsibility, and sometimes kindness begins with something as simple as believing someone deserves to be heard. Daniel Carter's greatest victory was never exposing a corrupt sheriff. It was teaching his daughter that even when the world treats you unfairly, you should never let someone else's cruelty take away your kindness.